Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. Happy Monday, guys. I hope you all had a great weekend. Maybe did something with family, maybe just went outside, did something different, went to the ocean. I don't know, whatever you did, I hope that you had a great time. You're relaxed and refreshed and ready to jump on this week. Interestingly, our song on Friday, I had made a speculation at the end of the show that turned out to be absolutely right. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But first, it's Monday, guys, and you know what we do on Monday. We talk about the things that we need to talk about. And the first thing is, have you guys checked out the Everyday Rocks box set yet? I don't know, because again, I'm recording way ahead of time. I don't know if there are any available, but if there are not, and you want one, grab it before they're gone. 7 picture discs, 7 t-shirts, a wall calendar, great inspirational cards from the lyrics, just an amazing box set. If you guys didn't check out my walkthrough video of that, the unboxing of the box set, it's still a box set, even though I unboxed it. I'm not sure how that logistically works, but that is how it is. And really enjoyed doing that for BMG. Also, if you haven't gotten it yet or haven't checked it out, check out the Choices box set. Another very important one. This one really kind of personal to the members of the band. They pick out their songs that you should listen to kind of decide, you know, here's my impression of Uriah Heep. Very important stuff from different band members, past and present, that were a part of that. A really fantastic box set. Also, guys, it is getting to be that time where submissions are going to start going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Ohio. Please make sure that you sign the petition to get Uriah Heep on this ballot. Damn it, it needs to happen. You guys deserve it. You know, 50 plus years in the business, they've written influential songs. They've kept us, that's a good word, kept us entertained, given us so much over the years, 25 albums, endless world tours. So many people that are listening to the show have memories of concerts they've been to or the time that they bought a t-shirt or bought an album. I mean, this band is in everybody's hearts. They deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Ohio. So let's get them in there. You can go to the show page on scotthaskin.com, click on the Uriah Heep podcast link, scroll down just a wee bit, and you will see the link for the induction form. Also, you can go to facebook.com/heaprockhall, and there is a link to the petition there as well. Get on that if you haven't already. Please tell your friends. Let's get the word out there and let's make it happen for these guys. Speaking of people that make it happen, there are a few people that form this lovely little group of patrons for this show that deem it important enough to where they actually give their hard-earned money. And that really means a lot to me that they do that. If you guys are interested in doing that, you can go again to the same page, scotthaskin.com, click on the Uriah Heep podcast link, go all the way to the bottom of the page, and you will see links for Patreon or PayPal. You can do a one-time donation, or you can set up a reoccurring payment through PayPal as well. You do not have to be a member of Patreon unless you want to be. It's kind of cool, you know, to be able to be on that list, I think. And speaking of people that are on that list, at the $5 Easy Living tier, we have Brad D. and Kenny Wymore. On the $3 The Wizard tier, we have William Rose, Frank Teelgaard Mortensen, Goran Eriksson, and Peter Voss. And at the $1 Traveler in Time tier, the one who is stuck on the inside, Airtight Gravesite. Thank you all very much. Your efforts mean a great deal to me. They help me pay for the show. You know, these shows have costs, even though we don't pass on the cost to the listeners. All of the deep dive podcasts are free on all of the outlets. I mean, they're on some that you have to pay for, like they're on Spotify, but you're not going to join Spotify to listen to the podcast when you can listen to it for free on Podbean. You're going to join Spotify because you want to join Spotify because you want to listen to a bunch of music at a low cost. And so if that is where you go for your stuff, well, the podcast is there. If you want to go to Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, it's everywhere. pretty much all of the deep dive podcast ones, I think, are on most, if not all of those outlets. I haven't actually gone into where every spot is, but I've listed in the on the website and the show all the places that you can find these great podcasts. And speaking of these great podcasts, we've got just a growing list of wonderful podcasts that are part of the Deep Dive Podcast Network. They're all band related. Uriah Heep, though, is the only official band endorsed podcast. I don't know of any other podcasts, period, that are endorsed by the bands. There may be some out there. If there are, I have not seen them. But, you know, when I interviewed Mick, I talked to him about it. He thought it was a great idea. And here we are, a little over a year later, still doing shows, trying to catch up to where these guys are now. So in the Deep Dive Network, we have George and Tom at the Metal Gods podcast, a podcast all about Judas Priest. We have Ben and Sam at Universally Speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers podcast. We have Daniel and Josh at Diary of the Madmen, the ultimate Aussie podcast. We have Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z pod. We have Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, the one and only Hawkwind podcast. I had never actually heard of Hawkwind until this podcast popped up in the Deep Dive Podcast Network. So that was a new experience for me. And of course, we have Paul, Joe, and David at the In the Lap of the Pods podcast, a podcast based on the band Queen. We have Riot, Sabbath's Bloody podcast, going over the music of Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne. We have Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the other side. He interviews some amazing people in the music industry, and you should check out his show. We have The Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered, a Leonard Skinnerd podcast. We have Nate and John at the Deep Purple podcast, my gateway drug into the podcasting network of these bands. And of course, over at Metallicast, my buddy Brandon, I hosted a show for him while he was on hiatus after his wife had a baby. I was going to say after he had a baby, but that's not physically possible. But good on you. He got your wife to do it. So go check out his show. We also have Ace on Music, which is on Stitcher and YouTube. Fantastic show. Also has a Patreon fence where you can go through the Patreon account and find out what they talk about after they edit the public show. Well worth it. Very informative and great show. And of course, our friend Allegra over at gottahear'em.com for her well-researched information on Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, their touring lives, and all kinds of cool tidbits about them and other little bits of music. Very, very cool stuff. And last but not least, of course, I want to thank my dear friends over at Audionamics. I would not be doing podcasts as easily without you guys. I would not be able to pump out 5 shows a week between my 2 shows, sometimes more than that. I think the most that I've done was 9 in 1 week, which was insane. And that never would have happened had it not been for the hours and hours that I am saved in audio cleaning by Audionamics' Instant Dialogue Cleaner, also known as IDC. Go check that out on the Audionamics website. And of course, my buddy Scott Lazinski, who did the logos for the show, did such an amazing job with them, both the day and the night logo. He designed that, and cannot thank you enough. I almost want to do another podcast just so I can have him design another logo. It's that good to me. So thank you, everyone who has contributed to the show. And thank you, of course, who continue to share the post, to Dave White, who shares the posts on Twitter and Facebook. He also does the Uriah Heep website at uriah-heep.com and the Mick Box website at mick-box.com. Amazing websites, hundreds of pages over the years. It's been thousands of hours that he's put into this so that you guys have some really amazing resources. I've pulled from those resources many times myself. Great stuff there. Now, getting on to today's song, called Change. Our last song on Friday was called Question. And I had theorized, because remember, I've never heard this album before. So I had theorized that Question and Change were going to be a split song, like Paradise the Spell, that Question went into Change because of the abrupt ending that it had on the MP3 file. And so it turns out I was right. They are one song. Question does go into Change. And I had also speculated from the story perspective that, Question is about, we need to stop and decide, who do we want to be? Who are we? Why are we here? That sort of thing. And I'm going to speculate that Change, because I have not looked at the lyrics, Change is going to be about implementing the answers that we found when we asked ourselves those honest questions. And, again, I will say there are certain things that I do once or twice a year that just kind of, bring me back down to earth. They take me out of the normal schedule of things doing 5 podcasts a week, working on albums, whatever it is that I'm doing in my life, my day job. I just kind of take a little bit of time and get away from that, even if it's just a couple of hours. And I kind of just reflect and think about, these things that they asked in questions, like, why am I here? What do I want to accomplish? And I take that a little bit, into my own personal direction. Like, what do I want people to remember me for when I'm gone? What do I want to accomplish so that people have a reason to remember me? What is my mark on the world? And so I do those very things. So I'm going to be curious to see if Change follows that line of thinking. We will find out as we start the song. Here is Change by Uriah Heep.
Once the world's a man of power, had no care for human life. Then one day he saw his living life.
Yeah, this is a cool transition from the last song, Question, into this one, Change. I really like the way that the tempo picked up. I like the feeling of going from that one to this one. It's a little bit more, it just feels a little bit happier and more upbeat because obviously, we're a little more at peace at this point, but also just musically, it just flowed really nicely. I like the strumming of it. It kind of, if you were playing this really heavy, it actually would be a lot more punk sounding. Just that da 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 would be something more I could hear like the Misfits doing, for example, that style of music if this were really heavy. But that's the beauty of music. You can take something and do it in so many different ways, change the style of it, change the feel of it, all by playing basically the same thing, just using different instruments, maybe a slight tempo change here and there, but a very, very beautiful opening nonetheless. I think that flowed brilliantly from Question into Change. And then, of course, Bernie now is singing a little bit differently. There's a little less gentleness, a little more sense of purpose, up front. It sounds really good. He's back to the kind of singing that we normally hear from him. Really glad he sang Question the way that he did. And I like that it changed for a change. It's kind of like they did with Paradise the Spell. Paradise was a much slower song. And then it just kind of like really went up tempo when they got to the Spell. This isn't quite as drastic of a change, but it does have a huge feeling shift for me. I love the progression of this song. I think it's fantastic. I think the voice sounds really good, really strong. This is kind of, I don't know, comeback song isn't really the right feel. And if you've heard previous episodes where I've talked about that, you know what I mean. But it does feel empowering. It does feel like things are going good now. Like we've seen where we were off track and we've corrected course. That's the feeling I get from the music here. There's such a great balance of instruments in this song. I mean, there's times where the bass comes through a little bit more. There's times where you hear the guitar a little bit more. There's times when the organ is cutting through. Love those little flanged out parts right there in the vocals. That sounded really good. I think there might have been a touch on the keyboards as well, but that was really nice. A nice surprise. It blends. It kind of makes me feel like the song is soaring a little bit when I hear a passage like that, but very, very well crafted. Now, that's a very different backing vocal. I can't remember the song now, but I think we've heard that before where there was just like a lower voice in there. It's been a while. But in any case, it's something different. Again, changing things up, keeping it interesting, doing some sonic origami. There are so many subtleties in this song that I'm really enjoying. Like, I'm just going to come in and do backups for that one little part, nothing else. I'm going to throw in this little keyboard lick in that one measure we have before that next verse starts again. Lots of little things going on in here, which, as I always say, make the biggest difference in a song.
Moving round in circles, talking words that never end, standing in the grip of madness. Why, oh why? What are you saying? How can we choose to turn away? How do we change our minds?
Love that little passing from left to right of the flanged out vocals there. And then again, we have a different backing vocal in this position. Everything's changing. They're constantly doing something different. They don't sit on their laurels and go, here's how we're going to do the chorus every time. Here's how we're going to do the verse every time. Like, they're a constantly evolving song type band. I mean, there were plenty of times where they did that kind of stuff, especially during the 80s into the early 90s. But we're kind of getting back to that old Uriah Heep that we, most of us fell in love with in the first place. Those just out of nowhere changes, effects, little things happening here that we just would have never been able to predict listening to the song.
There is no explanation why. There is no rhyme or reason. Just feel the love when you're alive.
Well, that would be interesting to do this song live, switching back and forth between the electric and the acoustic. I know there are acoustic simulator pedals that will take an electric guitar and almost like a MIDI synthesizer will turn it into, I mean, it's not done by MIDI, but will turn it into that acoustic guitar sound. And I wonder the difference because you're talking a different material of string, you're talking a different kind of neck. I wonder how precise those really are. I'm sure that they give a great atmosphere of an acoustic guitar, but very rarely does anything ever replace an actual real instrument. Like the Nord is a great Hammond simulator, but it's not the same as having a Hammond B3 or a C3 with Leslie speakers, but you can get a great sound out of a Nord, as we've heard Phil do many times. And a lot of times, because the organ is in the background, you can't necessarily tell. If it were right up front and in your face, you might be able to tell. But so I wonder, I think live you would probably have to use something like an acoustic simulator, wouldn't you? Because obviously you can't switch between an electric and an acoustic that fast. It just wouldn't work. Or you'd have to have two people, right? And right now Mick's the only guitarist in the band. So probably either didn't do it live or had to have done something like that allowed for it, or just played it differently and played the whole thing electrically. Just played maybe a different style during the acoustic parts, all kinds of possibilities. But then I don't know if they ever did the song live. So there's that. But I do love this. I love the difference, the feel in the switches there going from electric to acoustic. And it feels really good. I love that last part. It was kind of progressive, but not crazy or over the top or anything. It stayed within the song. I was kind of expecting there might be a solo or something over it, but there wasn't. And then that transitioned into another really lovely part. And the song goes on. But yeah, this is a great combination of elements in this one. Another really cool segment, great little bits from the vocals, some nice effects on the keyboards as well. But again, I'm kind of like, yeah, it's a cool part, but I'm still waiting for that solo to come in. I mean, we're halfway through the song now, so there may be one coming up here in the next minute or so. I don't know. We will find out. But those are definitely some cool parts. I guess I'm just so used to, and they've done this a couple times on this album though, where they've had the longer passages like that, where they change things up. They're a little bit more progressive on this album than they have been in a while, and it really does feel good. I'm just like, my brain is just like, okay, Mick's going to start, so I better stop now. So I can talk and not cut off his solo, because again, the one rule on the show.
Lies misunderstanding, move before it gets too late. Take this chance or life will pass you by. This is the only way. We must pull ourselves together. There's so much we must explain. Got to teach the children what is true. There is no other way. Why did we choose to turn our way? Why did we change our mind? The will to see things through. There is no explanation why. There is no rhyme or reason. Just feel the love when you're alive.
Well, they're getting so much out of that groove, aren't they? So much real estate there musically. It sounds good. Just again, the little inflections of the vocals coming in with the flange, really strong delivery from Bernie, music just backing him up. Trevor is on fire on this song. Lee is as solid as ever. He's got some good fills, but he's really just staying solid on the song. And I think there's so many things going on that we really don't need anything to distract from where we're at this point. You know, you add too many elements and there become too many things to listen to, too many things that you don't catch because you're trying to hear what you can. And, you know, it's like being in one of those, what are those, like the air tanks with the money grab tanks, like where they blow air from the bottom and the dollars are just flying. And every time you try to grab one, you drop the one that was in your hand. It's kind of like that. Like every time you try and focus on one thing, then you're losing other things. So you have to listen multiple times, which is fine because it's great music, but to really catch everything that's going on. So I'm kind of glad that Lee's dialing it down a little bit up to this point. I suspect that towards the end, he'll start getting into his normal Lee type self and going off a little bit more as he tends to do towards the end of a song. But I really like the blend. The mix is fantastic. I can hear so many different things and it's great. Bernie's got the energy. It's just, this is a happening song. So believe it or not, for those of you who were not counting that, which I would suspect is a good majority of the audience, that actually is in 4/4 time. I thought it might not be. It felt like it was a little bit off of that, but it's just the way that they're doing the transition, going back into the riff again. But yeah, it is actually in 4/4. Has a really good off feel to it though, doesn't it? I really like that. And obviously now we're going to shift into something else. They've just kind of stopped for a second and let us go, wait a minute, what? And then they're going to kick right back in with something else. In the middle of all these things that are going on, I'm still trying to just enjoy the mix of this as well. You know, the acoustic guitar with those little background fills in the keyboard, that da 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 da, Really, really nice blend. It's just so perfectly set together that everything that needs to come through is coming through, and it's building just this really beautiful sonic quality to the song. I'm trying to think of what this reminds me of, and I felt this on question too. I don't think it's Crosby, Stills and Nash, but it might be Crosby, Stills and Nash. Just thinking the way the vocals sound here. I don't know. That's what's coming to mind, but I can't think of any particular song. Maybe it's something about the style. I'm not hugely familiar with their music. Obviously, I know a couple of the popular tunes, and I met David Crosby. We kept running into each other at the very first NAMM show that I ever went to. He was it was like within the first hour too. I'm on sonic overload, like visual overload, audio overload. There's just so much happening at that show. If you don't wear earplugs, you're really going to regret it. And so I was just kind of, picked a section and I started going up and down the aisles, and David was going up and down the same aisles, but in the opposite direction. So we kept catching each other. And then I accused him of stalking me, and he laughed. And that was the last time I saw him, but we were also at the end of the row. So, but that was a fun day. But yeah, there's something about this that reminds me, I don't know if it's vocally or musically or what it is, but that's what's coming to mind. I don't know. See what you guys think. Well, there's that Lee Kerslake. We know, what did I tell you? He'd be on fire at the end. Some great fills there, actually, really, really innovative and interesting. Just a beautiful musical passage, though, fading out. I like the longer fade. I think that works well for this song. I think it would have worked well for Question had it not blended directly into Change. It wouldn't have made any sense to do it that way. But another great song. I think this is a fantastic continuation of Question, but it's standalone. If it weren't for the fact that they fade into each other, or I should say Question fades into Change, either one would be a brilliant standalone song. And together they're just that much more powerful. It's really sort of a bit of an epic saga, really. Really, really well done music. I love these two songs. I think they're fantastic. And I'm so glad that I got to do this show and cover them. Like I said, Sonic Origami is a brand new album to me. I've never heard it before. I knew of it. And I'm really enjoying it so far, and we are well into it, guys. It is a great show to do on a Monday, I think. A great song to start the week. Good vibes. I'm feeling good. I hope you guys are feeling good. We will see you tomorrow for Shelter from the Rain. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!